It's great to be standing because you're going to be sitting for about 4 hours. So, you know, stretch those legs, jump on the spot. You'll thank me for it later. Ladies and gentlemen, I must say this is deliberate. It's to build the anticipation, the expectation, to build the fervor. I can almost feel it coming off the audience now. I can feel it. I feel you. It's going to be a crescendo. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Rwanda and the Chairperson of the African Union, our host, His Excellency President Paul Kagame, accompanied by the Chairperson of the African Union Commission and the President of Niger, the AfCFTA champion. A warm round of applause, please. Please be seated. Your Excellencies, heads of African Union member states, former heads of African Union member states, heads of delegations, assembled dignitaries, heads of regional economic commissions and UN agencies, leaders of the private sector, civil society and academia, welcome to the first ever African Continental Free Trade Area Business Forum, here in the beautiful city of Kigali. I'm Mark Edo, and I have the singular pleasure of being your Director of Ceremony. That's more or less your traffic warden for the important event that we have today. And I see the President of AfCFTA over to my left, Benedict Orama, in the audience. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Benedict Orama for co-sponsoring this event with the African Union to make it possible. Now, we have an amazing day for you. I have done hundreds of events, and I know many of you on stage here. And I will say that I've never had this concentration of quality speakers on one stage in my entire career. What you've put together here is absolutely amazing. It's amazing. It's going to be a great day. Let me take you back to 1963. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, and he said the words, very simple, Africa must unite. And he lamented that African countries sold raw materials to countries outside of Africa instead of selling them to themselves. Fast forward to 2018, And our countries, African countries, still trade twice as much with Europe as we do with ourselves. But that is about to change, because tomorrow we will witness history. From Algeria to Zambia, from Angola to Zimbabwe, from A to Z, Africa's continental free trade area has the potential to transform lives of millions of our people across Africa. And tomorrow, heads of state and heads of delegations of the African Union member states will put pen to paper and sign the AfCFTA into existence. Now, policymakers cannot make the AfCFTA a success alone. No, you, the private sector, are the engine that will make this brave new world a reality. Over the next few hours, you'll hear from some of the leading lights in government and business on how we can make that a reality. Now, this platform, the AfCFTA Business Summit, wouldn't be possible without the hard work of our first speaker and her team. To give the welcome address on behalf of the government of Rwanda, please put your hands together for the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, Ms. Claire Akamanzi.
Your Excellency Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda and Chairperson of the African Union, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, business leaders, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A very, very warm welcome to you all, and thank you for responding to our invitation to this business forum, ahead of the launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We will be delighted to interact with you over the next few days, and together with my compatriots here in Rwanda, we are at your disposal to ensure that your stay is comfortable and your business engagements are successful. Today's forum is an opportunity for exchange between our leaders, policymakers, and the private sector on forging a deeper and more practical continental integration. The private sector is not only a source of financing, it is the engine of prosperity, working very closely with the governments. The CFTA comes at a time when Africa's long-term growth prospects are strong. We will have the largest working-age population in the world by 2034, and we are urbanizing faster than any other region. These offer an opportunity to double our productivity and take advantage of a single market. This is why involving the business community today is absolutely crucial. Your Excellencies, as we were organizing this forum, we received loud and clear feedback from the private sector that they want to be more connected to their leaders and to the African Union. It is their wish that this interaction is a lasting one. And so I want to commend and thank the African Union Commission for their leadership and collaboration in organizing this forum, as well as the partners with whom we worked, including several African and international institutions, chambers of commerce, the Afro Champions, among many others. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I know we have a busy agenda ahead, but we invite you to take time to enjoy Rwanda before you depart. I recommend 3 activities. First, carry a piece of Rwanda home with you when you go back. How? Please visit our cultural village located next to Serena Hotel and where you received your accreditation. You will find high-quality made in Rwanda products and souvenirs, and you will be able to also sample Rwandan food and dance to Rwandan music. Second, stay a day or 2 longer and visit our countryside. From our national parks to our 1,000 green hills, there's a lot we want to show you. Last but not least, in case you are the all work and no play type, we invite you to stop by the Rwanda Development Board to learn about our business opportunities. We guarantee that you will register your business within 6 hours, even online at the comfort of your business center or room. And you will be able to carry your company registration certificate home with you. I thank you very much, and once again, welcome.
Thank you, Claire. Now, I've had the good fortune of being with the next speaker quite closely for the last few days and observed him tirelessly working to educate the media, stakeholder groups, private sector, the list goes on the benefits that the AfCFTA can bring. And there are many. So please welcome to the stage His Excellency, the AUC Commissioner of Trade and Industry, Ambassador Albert Muchanga.
I thank you very much, Director of Ceremony, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Ministers, distinguished business leaders, and distinguished delegates. I join my colleague in welcoming you to this forum. And I record my very sincere happiness to see you all. In this forum, we are seeking to leverage the power of business to drive Africa's integration under the Continental Free Trade Area. The private sector will play very pivotal roles in this new market. A few examples. After this forum, you'll be better positioned in raising awareness about the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as advocating for its early operationalization. Our hope, therefore, is that we shall, after this forum, transform all of you into African Continental Free Trade Area ambassadors. In addition, you will, during this forum, be more exposed to opportunities for investing in the African Continental Free Trade Area, both in purely private sector investment projects and public-private partnerships. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers, distinguished business leaders, and distinguished delegates, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a huge market of 1.2 billion people. This population is projected to grow to 1.7 billion people by the year 2030. In that year, the African middle class, which is also growing, will be 600 million people. With a growing middle class, will also emerge growing spending power in diverse fields ranging from consumption of food to housing construction. As business leaders, I'm sure you're all aware, you're all fully aware that consumption is critical to growth of business and very strong economic growth. Both are vital to transforming Africa from a continent of poverty to a continent of prosperity. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished business leaders, and distinguished delegates, under the African Continental Free Trade Area, the national markets of African Union member states will begin the journey towards one internal and integrating market. Business operations will consequently be more efficient. We've also projected trade expansion under the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is very good for business. We expect intra-African trade to increase by 53.2% by 2022, just from tariff liberalization alone. If we include effective removal of non-tariff barriers, that trade expansion would double. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished business leaders, distinguished delegates, The program before you today was designed to promote interactive and action-oriented deliberations. We invite you all to be very candid. Frankness enriches conversations. Rich conversations produce commitment to act on agreed outcomes. We also invite you to be action-oriented and constructive. In this respect, you identify problems, and we also encourage you to offer some solutions. We further invite you to make use of the presence of heads of state and government, as well as ministers responsible for trade and industry, to suggest incentives that you may require to make the African Continental Free Trade Area market more attractive. This is because a sound business environment is a key success factor for the African Continental Free Trade Area, and therefore our theme, leveraging the power of business to drive Africa's integration. Furthermore, this is also an opportunity for you to engage in business networking. A good part of trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area will involve business-to-business transactions, and this is good for the development of regional value chains. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished business leaders, distinguished delegates, we have a very experienced team to capture all the decisions and recommendations to emerge from your deliberations. These will be presented to the full assembly of AU heads of state and government tomorrow through a vote of thanks to be delivered by one of the business leaders from the Afro Champions Club. This event would not have been successful if we worked on alone. A number of partners were involved: the government of the Republic of Rwanda, the Afro Champions Initiative, the African Export-Import Bank, which gave us very generous financial support, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, among others. I reaffirm my happiness that you are all here. We also reaffirm our warm welcome to you to this forum. Enjoy the benefits of these deliberations, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the President of Zimbabwe, His Excellency. You're very welcome. Please give him a round of applause. It's great to see you here. And in the next panel on leveraging the power of business to drive integration, His Excellency has graciously agreed to join the next panel. Now, I want to read some wise words. We need active support from the private sector. In fact, without your voice, something essential is missing. At the end of the day, we share the same goals of raising the well-being and prosperity of our citizens. I didn't write that. I didn't say that. Our next speaker did. His support of the CFTA process has helped to get us here today. To give the keynote address, please rise to welcome to the stage His Excellency, the President of Rwanda and the Chairperson of the African Union, President Paul Kagame.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, Excellency Amadou Yusuf, President of the Republic of Niger, Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Excellency Vice President of Ivory Coast, Excellency Musa Faki, Chairperson of the African Union, former heads of state, heads of international agencies and senior officials, African business leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to Kigali, and thank you all for being here today. I thank the chairperson, Musa Faki Mahamat, for convening this event, and I also commend the Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga, and the entire staff of the African Union Commission for their hard work and dedication. Tomorrow, we will sign a historic agreement creating a continental free trade area. The road to this point has been long indeed. It can be measured in decades, and we still have a few more steps to take. But we are persisting, and a new chapter in the story of African unity is set to begin. The last mile of the race is often the most arduous. I therefore wish to congratulate the leader of the Continental Free Trade Area process, His Excellency President Mahamadou Issouf, for keeping us on track. The stakes are enormous for Africa, but also for the entire global economy, to which Africa will contribute an ever greater share in the decades ahead. The creation of one African market necessarily entails a metamorphosis in how we think and act. The full involvement of the private sector is needed more than ever before. The purpose of today's forum is to discuss how to make the most of the new opportunities we are creating for ourselves. From now on, the clear wish of everyone is that consultation between business and political leadership at all levels becomes a continuous feature of continental deliberations. It should be understood that profit and power are not an end in themselves. They are tools for creating prosperity for every African. The Continental Free Trade Area symbolizes our progress toward the ideal of African unity, but that is not the only reason why it is so historic. This agreement is about trade in goods and services. These are the kinds of complex products that drive high-income economies. African workers adding value in Africa, services offered by African professionals using the latest technologies, manufactured goods that are made in Africa, and less than 20% of Africa's trade is internal, meaning from one African country to another. However, in the world's richest regional trading blocs, the level of internal trade is 3 or 4 times higher. Increasing intra-African trade, however, does not mean doing less business with the rest of the world. On the contrary, as we trade more among ourselves, African firms will become bigger, more specialized, and more competitive internationally. Let's also be realistic. We cannot take the Continental Free Trade Area for granted. After it is signed, there will still be challenges. Any concerns of technical issues that remain should be addressed fairly, but also expeditiously. Work on some additional protocols and annexes will also continue. Once again, the full engagement of the private sector will be absolutely essential. Allow me to outline 3 of the tasks before us. First, let's now raise our ambitions even higher. Success on free trade shows that we are capable of achieving much more together. This is not the time to sit back and relax. The right place to start is moving rapidly to accomplish the other flagship projects in the first 10-year implementation plan of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Second, the agreement needs to be ratified by member states. The speed at which this occurs depends entirely on us. Let's do our part to communicate the rationale, the urgency of the Continental Free Trade Area to our parliamentarians, civil society organizations, and chambers of commerce, as well as to the media. Third, implementation will mean reform of procedures and rules at the national level. This won't happen overnight. It will be a process requiring dialogue and flexibility. But getting those details right is essential. Doing so anchors the case for the next stages of African integration in concrete outcomes that citizens feel in their daily lives. In summary, raise our ambition, ratify, and reform. The Africa we want is clearly visible on the horizon, and today, more than ever before, so too is the road we will travel together to get there. Allow me to close by welcoming you all once again and wishing you productive deliberations and a very happy, pleasant, and very pleasant stay in our country. I look forward to our interactions in the next session, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Take a seat, sir. If I could ask His Excellency to take a seat. Thank you, Your Excellency, for those wise words. You're now going to be joined by some of your close friends, Your Excellency. I'd like to invite to join President Kagame, a man they call the champion of the AfCFTA process, and for good reason they call him that. His Excellency, the President of Niger, Mahamadou Issouf. I'd also like to invite His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, to the stage, ladies and gentlemen. Also like to invite the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Her Excellency Ms. Vera Songwe. And last and certainly not least, perhaps one of the best known names in African business, the chairman of Econet Wireless, Mr. Strive Masiwa, ladies and gentlemen. I feel very lucky right now to have such a distinguished panel with me. I have not a lot of questions, but not a lot of time, so I'll get straight to it. I just want to come back to His Excellency President Kagame about the historical significance of what is about to happen. If you look around the world, we see increased protectionism. We see Brexit happening in Europe. We see trade deals being torn up or revised in the Americas. But here you see African countries moving in their own direction, charting their own path, liberalizing trade amongst themselves. How significant is that? And how does it fit in with the historical aspirations of integration for this great continent?
Thank you, moderator. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First, Africa has been lagging behind on many fronts, including on that process of integration. And in this particular case, the free trade that we are going to usher in when we have concluded this agreement among the African states. And as you've rightly mentioned, those who have been ahead of us, ahead of Africa, and actually doing the right thing, seem to be having difficulties with the right thing they were doing. While we were lagging behind, they were ahead, now they are having difficulties. I'm not saying that on our part, on the part of Africa, that this is a business, that this is going to be a benefit of having lagged behind, but I think we are on the right path, and even those who are leaving exactly the right thing they were doing and where we are headed will in the end come back to it and want to do that right thing again. So they will find us in the right place by the time we conclude this agreement. So continental free trade area and integration are more or less one and the same. They really complement each other in a very fundamental way, because it brings the people of Africa, the leaders, the private sector together in realizing the actual benefits of trading with each other, doing business together, working together, that strengthens all other aspects of even social integration that actually is also going to be beneficial to the whole continent. So even as I said earlier, with all the difficulties people find in meeting certain conditions or obligations. I think it's a question of how fast we are moving, and we should be moving as fast as possible. But I think the direction is the right one that we have taken, and we should continue in the same.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you. I will now turn to your fellow president, who has been called the champion of the AfCFTA process for good measure. He's worked, and his team have worked tirelessly to reach this historic moment that we now find ourselves in. Now, President Kagame, in your speech you said there's still lots of more work to do. It's not complete, it's not done yet, there's still lots more work. So, President Issoufou, I want to ask you, what are the next steps in the process for the establishment of the AfCFTA? What happens after this?
Bien, je vous remercie. Je voudrais d'abord remercier mon frère Paul Kagame pour l'hospitalité qu'il nous a offerte ici au Rwanda pour ce forum et puis pour le lancement demain de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Demain, nous allons en principe signer 4 documents. Le premier document, c'est l'accord cadre portant donc zone de libre-échange continentale. Il y a un deuxième document qui est le protocole sur le commerce des marchandises, un troisième document qui porte sur le commerce des services et enfin un protocole sur le règlement des différends. Une fois que cela aura été signé, l'étape suivante, c'est la ratification de ces documents. Une fois que le minimum requis de ratification est obtenu, en principe, l'accord ou les accords vont entrer en vigueur. Mais demain, nous allons discuter justement du nombre minimum de ratifications qui puisse permettre l'entrée en vigueur de ces différents accords. Mais également, la réflexion n'est pas terminée parce que ces accords ont des annexes, ont des appendices sur lesquels il va falloir continuer à travailler, sur lesquels il faut réfléchir et les programmer une réunion des négociateurs au mois de mai pour finaliser ce travail qui sera certainement présenté au prochain sommet ordinaire de l'Union africaine qui va se dérouler à Nouakchott au mois de juillet prochain. Ensuite, nous avons également à mettre en place un secrétariat qui sera chargé du suivi de la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange continentale. Ça, c'est, je dirais, la première phase. Nous avons une deuxième phase qui va être engagée, une deuxième phase de négociation qui va porter sur les négociations par rapport au protocole sur les investissements, par rapport au protocole aussi sur la concurrence et par rapport au protocole sur la propriété, je crois, intellectuelle, le droit de propriété intellectuelle. C'est des aspects extrêmement importants qui ne vont pas être laissés de côté et qui feront l'objet également de négociations. Voilà donc quelques étapes qui sont devant nous. Mais il y a un aspect extrêmement important qui a été souligné d'ailleurs par le président Paul Kagame, c'est l'aspect campagne de sensibilisation. Parce que l'intégration ne doit pas se faire seulement par le haut, il faut qu'elle se fasse par le bas. Il faut que les peuples africains s'approprient ce projet d'intégration africaine, ce processus d'intégration. Donc il y a une campagne de sensibilisation qu'il va falloir mener dans tous les pays membres de l'Union africaine afin de sensibiliser les populations, afin de sensibiliser les citoyens, afin que les citoyens s'approprient ce projet. Et je pense que le présent forum est un début d'ailleurs, marque un début pour la sensibilisation des opérateurs économiques qui sont ici présents et qui sont peut-être les premiers bénéficiaires de ce projet de zone de libre-échange continental. Merci.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I will follow on from what you said about sensitizing the stakeholder groups and turn to His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat. It's sort of a two-part question, really. The first is, what are the guarantees that we will move from mere signature tomorrow to real implementation of this historic agreement? The next question is, with reference to sensitizing different stakeholder groups, what is the most important question, most important message, should I say, to the private sector? Because, as we heard earlier, this is not possible without them.
Merci. Je voudrais d'abord remercier les participants d'avoir répondu favorablement à notre invitation. Remercier également le Rwanda d'avoir accepté d'abriter cet important forum. Les secteurs privés, la société civile, le monde universitaire, les personnalités qui sont présentes ici, je crois que c'est pour nous une occasion de vulgariser un des projets phares de l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine. C'est le commerce qui a toujours fait la richesse des nations. Et c'est le commerce qui a toujours permis au peuple de se connaître, de se découvrir et d'entretenir les meilleures relations. L'Afrique que nous voulons, c'est une Afrique unie, une Afrique prospère et une Afrique en paix. Il n'y aura jamais de paix, il n'y aura jamais de prospérité ni d'unité sans intégration. Et c'est pour cela que le CFTA est l'un des instruments qui puisse permettre à l'Afrique de se retrouver de par ses intérêts. Nous avons passé 55 ans d'union, d'unité et d'union politique. Mais cela n'est pas suffisant. Pour que l'Afrique, celle dont nous rêvons, soit une réalité, il faut un moteur qui puisse tirer cette volonté des peuples. Et je pense que le secteur privé a un rôle clé. Au risque de me répéter, le commerce a toujours été le lien entre les nations. Et donc, certes, le politique, pour rendre effectif cet accord, doit faire ce que le président Champion a dit. Donc, il faut signer, il faut ratifier, il faut créer les conditions au niveau national, au niveau régional et au niveau continental. La sécurité juridique et judiciaire. Il faut créer une certaine gouvernance économique et politique. Il faut que l'ensemble du secteur privé, que ce soit les grandes entreprises ou les petites et les moyennes entreprises, puissent en bénéficier. Il faut que les administrations nationales se mettent à l'heure de l'intégration. Les questions fiscales, les questions douanières, il faut avoir toutes ces facilitations et accompagner le processus. Il y a certes, vous l'aurez constaté, nous avons déjà en janvier lancé le marché unique en matière de transport aérien, qui est également l'un des éléments facilitant cette intégration. Nous avons également le protocole, d'ailleurs que nous soumettrons également à la signature des chefs d'État sur la libre circulation des biens. Donc il y a beaucoup de choses à mettre en place et il faut impliquer le secteur privé, la société civile et pour que les Africains s'approprient. Le politique fait sa part qui est importante, mais le plus important c'est l'appropriation par les bénéficiaires eux-mêmes.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I will move to your left, if you don't mind, because and follow on from that issue of what you were asking the private sector, almost where the private sector should stand right now to support the AfCFTA. Now, Strive Masiwa, your company is in 20 countries already. I mean, it truly 29 countries already. I stand corrected, 29 countries in a whole range of areas, including telecommunications, the future, the digital space. So this is important to you. You want to see this succeed because you're already there. You've heard the calls from His Excellency the President and also the Chairperson that they need you. They cannot do this without you. My question turns around. What's the expectations of the private sector? What do you want from African governments to establish the AfCFTA?
Well, first of all, thank you, and my appreciation to His Excellency President Kagame for welcoming us here as the private sector. This is really what we want. We want to work together and to be partners. But in answer to your question with respect to the Continental Free Trade Area, we want one market. In a word, we want a single market. Africa has a GDP as a continent of nearly $3 trillion. It's about the size of India. Our population is almost the same. We're 1.2 billion people. But we don't have a market of 1.2 billion people. We don't have a continental GDP of 3 trillion. What we have is cantons, little countries. So when you are trying to trade across our continent, you are not seeing the opportunity of that market size. So and this is reflected in the level of intra-trade, as President Kagame said in his speech, less than 17%. Regions like Asia are already hitting 68%. It is reflected. When you look at our greatest challenge on this continent, it is the creation of jobs for young people.
Yes.
Even with the growth that we have seen over the last 2 decades in economies like the Rwandese economy, which is hitting 7%, we cannot sustain employment creation. And central to that is to give us, the private sector, the tools to expand across our markets, the tools to be able to move people that are working within our businesses, and to be able to move much quicker than we do. It is extremely difficult. I speak to investors from within Africa, as well as from beyond. And they tell you, our continent is hard to do business in, but for a few countries. It shouldn't be an exception for us to create the kind of employment opportunities for our young people. This is absolutely fundamental. This is not a choice that we are dealing with here. It's not an option.
Yeah. We can't take it or leave it. It has to be done.
It's not a leave it, take it or leave it. So what we want is efficient implementation. We should have a competition, a prize, for the countries that ratify this accord quickest. Let's call it the Masiwa Prize. Okay, because it will reflect, it will be a serious message to the world that Africa is open for business. Let's ratify this accord. Let us move quickly and execute on it. Thank you.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Speaking of a prize, later on in this program, there'll be the launch of something called the CFTA Country Index. This is almost like the enabling a business environment, ease of doing business index that the World Bank releases. And it will indeed measure the progress on many fronts. It comes out of a division of UNECA called the African Trade Policy Center, and you'll see the launch of that index later on today. In fact, if I would advise everybody here to go to UNECA's website and take a look at some of the statistics that Strive was talking about. They're fascinating. Not just the 17% compared to the rest of the world, but what AfCFTA can do in numbers. It's quite remarkable. And perhaps the most significant research done on intra-Africa trade has been done by UNECA. So I'm going to turn to Vera Songwe right here. What are the most important numbers and, I suppose, analysis and statistics that our political leaders and business leaders right here should take note of, Vera?
Listen, first of all, thank you very much to President Kagame, the government of Rwanda, for having us here today, the champion, the Afro champion, President Yusufu. I think to the African Union as well and all the work we've been doing together. Just to pick up on what Strive said, and I think there is a slide on what you said, I think it's how will we know? I think tomorrow we will be closing the deal. So we know that for a fact. But the question is, are we ready to continue going on this movement? Are we ready to make sure that we can actually succeed? And what the ECA has done is we have put together an index, and I want the slide to go up if we can, which is basically Strive. We didn't plan this, but we have the index for you, which will basically let us know how quickly and how fast countries are going ahead in terms of ratifying
she doesn't have the prize yet.
So
she doesn't have the prize.
The prize will come, I think, more importantly, because you will open your markets. And just to give you some numbers, and I think Strive was talking about that, in 2025, if we do well, and if we make this work, the African market will be $3.6 trillion. This is not insignificant for business, because at the end of the day, this is why you're here. Of that $3.6 trillion, you will have about $2.4 trillion, which will be business to business. For business to work, we're creating supply chains, which means basically that you have to start trading across borders on the continent to build the kinds of African conglomerates that we need to power the continent. Now today, when you look at business to business and how well we're doing, we're not doing so well. Most of our big businesses actually import their inputs from abroad, from out of the continent, because of the time it takes to actually bring in goods onto the continent. So what we're doing with the African Country Business Index is to say, how can we make sure that we hold ourselves to task? How can we ensure that we will actually see this as a reality, hopefully when we ratify the CFTA in a few days? So the first index that we will be measuring is implementation. And you look at regular public-private consultations. This is one, so we'll take that as something that we've done well. The national strategies on how you implement the CFTA. We know that different countries have different procedures. In some countries it's the executive, in some countries it's the parliament, and in some countries it will be a combination of both. But we hope that those consultations will happen soon enough and we can ratify. The second thing, we'll be looking at easing trade in Africa. And it will be basically what kinds of cross-border logistics are needed. Can we break down those barriers? I think His Excellency the Head of State talked about non-tariff barriers. In actuality, on the continent today, it's not tariffs that kill us. It is non-tariff barriers. It's the things we do not see. It's the impediments to trade that we cannot visibly calculate.
Give some examples of that for those that don't know what a non-tariff barrier is.
For example, you decide that you are going to assess the quality of a good that comes to your country without very clear conditions about what standardization processes you're going to use.
And that stops, that stops the flow.
That stops the flow immediately. So I think these are the kinds of things that we don't quantify that essentially are stopping us. And we hope that with the CFTA, we can actually move forward on these kinds of non-tariff barriers. You have issues about countries regulating imports and exports. You know, in 1 month, we say you can only export 10%. I see the Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire here with cashews. And, work has been done in opening the markets for cashews and keeping it open. Some other countries contract and expand the exports of cashews and the imports of cashews. This means that if you're not in the country that is producing the cashews, but you're processing the cashews, you cannot ensure a good supply of those cashews to continue working. That is a non-tariff barrier because you're not stopping it, but occasionally the countries will block the exports. The third index that we're looking at is what we're going to call trade for development or trade for Africa 2063, the Africa we want, is essentially, next slide, how can we make sure that we are actually trading? And I think when we talk a lot about trade, we look at the numbers, but essentially trade is about production. And that's where the jobs get created, is because we can produce. We need essentially to produce more on the continent. We cannot trade more if we're not producing more. And that's why the whole context of sort of trade for development, trade for Agenda 2030, Trade for Agenda 2063 comes in place. As we produce, we will create more employment by definition. We also know on the continent that the smaller businesses will create the most number of jobs. But these smaller businesses need to be anchored around big business. This has been the development process across the world. Today on the continent, we have about 700 corporates. If you look at the sector of construction, 76% of the construction sector is Africa-owned. This basically means that in the construction sector, we could create a supply chain that works if we supply regionally, if we supply locally. But we are not doing that. We still import 15% of our cement from abroad. We should not be importing cement from outside the continent today. We make every raw material that you need for cement. But when you ask countries, they would say it's faster to get it from Norway. Or fertilizer, for example. We still import a big share of our fertilizer. We should not be doing that because we can produce internally. And by doing production, for example, of fertilizer, it will be cheaper. The women will have more fertilizers, output will increase, productivity will increase, agribusiness will grow. And I think this is the linkage that we are trying to make here when we sit here today. The SADC zone, 60% of manufactured goods are sold and traded inside the SADC zone, only 10% in ECOWAS. Nothing stops ECOWAS from becoming like SADC and trading a lot more manufactured goods. I think that we can do that if we can open our borders, and that is the last part that we're looking at, is what is the reduction of all this cost going to do to our trade? Hopefully, the first thing it will do is create more jobs. Because that is essentially what we want, is that we can see more creation in jobs, we can see better governance, and all the other indexes that we monitor will improve by definition if we can have better continental free trade agreements. So today, we are actually witnessing a substantial change in paradigm on the continent if we can make this happen. It's basically saying Africa can produce. If Africa produces, Africa can employ its youth, Africa can employ its young women. And trade is also particularly trade in services. As we break down this barrier of trade, we will have a huge service sector that will open up on logistics, on information technology, on e-platforms, where we believe that even more women will have access to markets that they do not have today. So this for us is, I think that when we look at the numbers, and I hope I've given you enough numbers to show you where we are going and what we can do, it is not impossible. I think with SADC at 60% intra-Africa trade and manufacturing, ECOWAS at 10, maybe the next challenge is to say, can we get ECOWAS to come up to 60% as well?
That's very clear. As I said, go to the UNECA website, speak to UNECA. I think this is one point. When we're talking about stakeholders, we're not just talking about a bilateral discussion between your government and your private sector. We're talking about talking to other stakeholders, like UNECA. There are areas of collaboration that you've not even thought of, and I hope over the next day, all of you will speak to each other and find ways that you can combine forces and combine knowledge to push through the AfCFTA and make this a reality. The champion of the AfCFTA, I'm coming back to you. We heard from Strive Masiwa, they're ready. There are leaders in business who are ready right now to work with you. My question is, what are some of the incentives from the side of government? What can government do now in order to offer businesses that makes it more attractive to come on board? Because there are those skeptics out there that don't understand what this thing is. They're afraid. There is fear, and fear lives in the unknown. So first, we have to make the CFTA known. But once we do that, what are the first steps towards forging that stronger relationship with the private sector, Your Excellency?
Je voudrais d'abord dire que ce qui va se passer demain est vraiment historique. C'est historique dans le processus d'intégration du continent, ce continent qui a été divisé, ce continent qui a été balkanisé, qui a été donc affaibli. L'Afrique, c'est 84 000 kilomètres de frontières. Et ces frontières sont autant d'obstacles au développement du commerce intra-africain. Cela a été dit, qui ne représente à peine que 17% de l'ensemble des échanges du continent. Et donc, je voudrais insister sur le fait que la zone de libre-échange continentale a pour but, a pour objectif de liquider ces obstacles, de liquider les obstacles tarifaires, de liquider les obstacles non tarifaires. Cela a été dit tout à l'heure. Et il est certain que cela va avoir des effets immenses sur la croissance économique, parce que c'est ça aussi qui va intéresser les opérateurs économiques, avoir une croissance forte sur le continent. Toutes les variables qui forment le PIB vont être influencées par la zone de libre-échange continentale, que ce soit la consommation, cela a été dit, que ce soit les exportations, que ce soit les investissements, que ce soit les importations, tout cela va être influencé par la mise en place de la zone de libre-échange continentale. Nous avons, avec cette zone, un marché, cela a été dit, de 1,2 milliard de consommateurs. Ça veut dire que la zone de libre-échange continentale va créer des économies d'échelle qui vont permettre une réduction des coûts, qui vont permettre une meilleure compétitivité, donc par conséquent, de nos entreprises, qui pourront mieux produire, qui pourront mieux exporter, cela a été dit, et qui pourront mieux satisfaire la consommation intérieure également. Cette consommation qui va être en pleine expansion, compte tenu du fait que la classe moyenne est en pleine expansion en Afrique. Un chiffre a été cité, je crois, tout à l'heure. D'ici 2030, on aura une classe moyenne de 600 millions de consommateurs. Donc, tout cela permettra à l'Afrique de produire, de satisfaire la demande intérieure et même d'accroître les exportations. Donc, voilà des opportunités qui sont offertes aux opérateurs économiques. Mais il faut dire aussi que la zone de libre-échange continentale n'est pas un projet isolé. C'est un projet qui est cohérent avec d'autres plans et programmes de l'Union africaine, comme par exemple le plan de développement industriel de l'Afrique ou le programme pour le développement des infrastructures en Afrique, c'est le programme, je crois, du NEPAD, comme également le programme détaillé d'accélération du développement de l'agriculture en Afrique, la vision minière africaine, etc. Et cela a été dit tout à l'heure, il y a également ce marché unique du transport aérien qui va être lancé également demain. Et je crois que demain aussi, nous allons pouvoir signer le protocole sur la circulation des personnes, sur le droit d'établissement, sur le droit de résidence. Tout ça, c'est des opportunités qui sont offertes donc, aux opérateurs économiques. Donc, globalement, je pense que... Et puis, il y a le climat des affaires qu'on est en train d'améliorer dans tous nos pays. Et tout cela va concourir, je crois, à booster les activités économiques. C'est des opportunités qui sont offertes aux opérateurs économiques pour faire davantage d'affaires sur le continent.
Now, Your Excellency, thank you. You mentioned exports, and I'm going to turn to His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. If you look at the percentage of global trade that Africa does, it's very low. In fact, Ms. Songwe, what is it, 3%? 3%, isn't it, of global trade? That has to change. 3% is almost negligible. How does the creation of one African market, Your Excellency, strengthen our position on that global trade stage?
I think between what
Bring that microphone over here.
between what Strive Masiwa said and what Vera said, numbers are clear, the benefits are clear, what needs to be done is clear. So I think we have only ourselves to blame if we just don't do what we know.
Only ourselves to blame.
So it increases the volume of everything that we want to do. We talked about employment, it's about the volume of business, it's the money, so we are the kind of horses that are very thirsty, taken to the well, and some horses decided to drink the water, others have excuses, and they end up dying of thirst. I think that is what it is.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yes, we can't keep having excuses for decades. It's not because we lack information. The data has been put there, we have all seen it. The statements have been made by all of us, very clear, to the point. So that's why, on one hand, it is simple to see the answer. I don't know why it remains difficult to just go ahead and implement what we are capable of and get the benefits we want. So it's no longer the numbers that are not known. It's no longer the problem we face as a continent that we don't know. So really, one is short of words as to what to explain in terms of our problem. It seems we enjoy problems. Yes, so if that is the case, then
we should stop enjoying problems.
Absolutely, especially when you have answers.
Yes.
And one of the answers is just what is being discussed here and what the African leaders, the political business leaders have come to put together, and we need to move on.
But from your vantage point, does it feel like change is happening? Are we in a new dawn, as some people are calling it?
Change is happening. It's only happening slowly. When we are capable of moving faster. But change is happening. But we can't just talk about change happening without examining the very factors that actually help us bring about this change, and also see what is it that delays us in obtaining the change that we are capable of and that we want. But change is there. In fact, the very fact that we are here talking about this, the head of state champion who put all this together, and the team of the African Union Commission, led by the chairperson, having worked on this and made sure that it is a priority on the agenda of the African Union, and all the good work that has given us the kind of information that we need, I think shows that some level of sense of urgency is coming in, and we just need to seize the moment and not to waste time.
Amen to that. His Excellency, the President of Niger, and also Vera and Strive all said one important word. It wasn't trade, it was jobs, the word jobs. And I see the AfCFTA as a job a creator, effectively, which is what we really need. Strive, you are particularly, your company is a telecommunications company, so you are at the cutting edge of the fourth industrial revolution, they're calling it. And we'll have a session later on just about that, so please catch that session. We have a lot of young and fantastic people. We're the youngest continent in the world. The way people are working is changing. Jobs are no longer jobs. It's can you add value? You can be sitting in your bedroom and be working somewhere right across the world. With this brave new world we see with technology, how can we use one market to capitalize on that and create jobs for our youth?
We create jobs through entrepreneurship. We have to nurture, we have to first of all recognize Africa's entrepreneurs. From the informal sector women to young people working, creating new businesses every single day on this continent. We have to recognize them, nurture them, support them. You know, there's another statistic on the other end that I'd like to throw at you. By the turn of the century, our population could hit 4 billion. We could be 40% by some projections of the global population. What we do today decides the legacy we set for that generation. That is the urgency that we have. Peace, security, everything else that we try to build is on the nexus of the opportunities we create for the young. This is a young continent, average age 19. And yet we have this fourth industrial revolution on our doorstep, where it will be extremely difficult to create jobs the way we've understood them. Let me tell you, if you're thinking of industrial manufacturing, go and have a look at what it's going to look like. And we are not going to be able to do it without building the kind of tools that our leaders are trying to put together here.
The type of platforms, like the
this
AfCFTA.
kind of platform. So I want to come back again to say, I think for me, the most important thing for the leaders that are gathered here, that I urge you, is you've got to believe that this is a necessity. Because if you don't believe this is a necessity, you can't articulate it to your own people. Because we have to go back and we have to explain to our people why this is necessary, why it is good. Because it also has costs, some of which will be in the immediate term. But when we all know what it is we're trying to do, it's like our battle for decolonization. It was costly, but we understood where we wanted to get to. The union of Africa is where we want to get to, the prosperity of our people. So it calls for us to go back and articulate to our people, because there will be pushback. When they start seeing movements of people and they say, where are these people coming from? Why do we have Nigerians here? Why do we have Senegalese here? They've got to understand it in the context of the greater good for our continent.
The benefits have to be articulated early.
They've got to be, we've got to go and we go. As we believe, we must become evangelists of what we believe.
Yes, evangelists.
And we've got to articulate it so that our people come with us. It's got to go beyond just talking to ourselves as leaders. We've got to bring in civil society. We've got to bring in our people's representatives in parliaments and so forth. Because otherwise, you just need a populist fire. And the next thing someone is calling for is reversal. Or someone says, we know our industries are going to be destroyed. There are provisions in this agreement that cover for all that. So there's nothing to fear. So we have to be able to articulate the benefits of this so that those voices don't pull us back.
And one of the voices, one of the evangelistic organizations is the UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, as it's well known. And we are lucky enough to have Mukisa Kituyi here in the audience. And I'd like him just to grab a mic. The young man, if you could stand up, please, sir. To give us a quick intervention, because we heard you earlier in the Afro Champions breakfast. Please, take the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. All great things have been said here. Just a little I want to add is that the global environment in which we launch this ambitious African baby is a hostile environment. The rising protectionism, the major threats to rules-based multilateral trading system. But we'll just take those two in a little way. The people who are angry with globalization are not only in the industrialized north where people are losing jobs. There's a lot of people who are angry about trade in Africa, just they don't have voices. And I think as we create voices for them, we better address their concerns before they become politically too angry.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you are committed to a genuine African integration, you must turn your backs to priorities to non-African initiatives. How do I mean? You cannot successfully sustain the momentum of African integration while you are also going on a retail market negotiating free trade agreements bilaterally.
Yeah.
The collective commitment is to say, let us give our priority to the African initiative. Two, when you have been shattering myths like President Kagame managed to shatter the myth, the fear of free movement of persons. And all of a sudden you had an African country where Africans were not on the longest queue getting in. Usually we are when you go to Europe, but not in Rwanda. And what has happened? You discover actually nothing bad happens. Let more scale up this, that the phenomenon of freeing movement of African services is a plus to Africa. Three, I think this is very important. There are political statements of solidarity which are not matched by concrete action. I had the privilege to be a trade minister and negotiate regional integration before. And one of the main problems we found is government officers at borders pretending they don't know the rules. They will just tell you, we don't know that you are allowed to bring this in. And they stop your truck at the border for 3 weeks, pretending they don't know. So, argumentum ad ignorantium is an excuse to slow down African integration.
And what is the solution? What's the quick solution to that?
The quick solution, number one, is political will. Number two is documenting and shaming the bad examples of not walking the talk. And number three, we have to be all ready to say one thing very importantly, that we don't have all the solutions. But there has to be a new mindset in the relationship between governments and business. That business is not the cash cow to get political money. And for business, that what you buy on the wholesale market collectively is cheaper, is more long run. But also a challenge to African business. If African business creates condition at home to invest their surpluses in Africa, instead of buying real estate in Leicester and keeping money in money auctions, we'll get more reshoring of African money coming back home than FDI flows from the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. That was a fantastic intervention there. A lot of food for thought. The word behind me is business. That's the biggest word there, business. So I'm going to turn to one of my country, Nigeria's biggest businessmen. And I hope I don't catch you out, Tonye Cole. If you could give Tonye Cole, who is one of our leading lights in the indigenous oil and gas sector in Nigeria. In fact, he was the businessman that took the African delegation to Davos this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I always call you Mr. Pan-African. So I want you to just come in. From what you've heard here, what are your thoughts?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for having us. First of all, one of the things that I'm seeing clearly is that business and politics are finally coming together. And this is something that is extremely important. For a long time, business has not been seen as playing an important role in Africa. This is changing, and it must change. We've talked about the political will to make this happen. There's absolutely no way that Africa can achieve what it needs to do if business is not in the room. The second thing that must happen is that businesses have to be at the table when these negotiations are happening, because we actually know what is happening across board. We're the ones that see where the difficulties are, we're the ones that know where the hurdles are, we're the ones that see what needs to be removed, we're the ones that see, and we are at the forefront of the battle lines where trade is involved. And so in drafting and putting all of this together, it's extremely important that it's not done, business is not called into the room after the fact, but it's called right at the beginning, and we have to work hand in hand in making this happen.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tonye. Tonye Cole, who's the founder of Sahara Energy in Nigeria. We heard two very interesting, of course, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria. Please, you have the floor, Your Excellency.
I want to congratulate the three presidents that are here. President Kagame, President Yusuf, and President of Zimbabwe. I want to give you double congratulations. Congratulations for the way you carry out the transition in your country. I won't say more than that. But you have told the world that your country is moving on. Please keep the country moving on. That's very important for all of us. And of course, I want to congratulate you for your being here. I want to also congratulate the Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire. We've had a lot this morning, and we're now having confluence of the public sector, our political leaders, and the private sector, our barons in the private sector. But we have one thing that is still giving me concern. And it is, we talk of political will, and that political will is not generally there. And it is not there, and please forgive me what I will say, it's not there because most of our leaders are not as knowledgeable as they should be. And don't let us deceive ourselves. They just don't know enough. And one of the things that you, President Kagame and President Yusuf, we have to try and do is get our political leaders sufficiently educated to be able, no, I'm not talking of education in going to school. I'm talking of education on these matters that are important so that we can get what I will call a critical mass of hands, heads, and minds of political leadership and private sector leadership to move us forward. Now, I am surprised that any African leader at this point in time will be talking about either not understanding this as very important to be here or to support what you are going to sign tomorrow. I see that as criminal to a fault. With all due respect, I see it as criminal to a fault. President Kagame, don't laugh. Now, what it means is that you have work to do. And you are now the chair of AU for this year. And now, if this year passes without this being where it should be, we will have missed a wonderful opportunity. And God forbid that. Secondly, there are a number of things that should go along with this if it will work. and it will work expeditiously. Infrastructure is one thing. We cannot talk of trade without communication, without transportation, without energy. Now, how do we bring this up so that as we are signing this important trade agreement tomorrow, I will finish now. As we are signing it tomorrow, we are also making sure that those complementary efforts that will go along with it in the area of infrastructure and both soft and hard infrastructure also go along with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eshe Gidigan. Eshe Gidigan, sir. If you would permit me, I will, we're almost out of time, so I want the last word, if you permit me, to come from the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat. Now, we heard 3 excellent interventions. There's a lot of food for thought there. I just want your last thoughts based on that.
Je crois que le lancement du CFTA, du marché unique en transport aérien, la libre circulation des personnes sont un test grandeur nature pour l'Afrique, un test à la dimension du continent. Je crois que le leadership africain est interpellé. Les forces vives africaines sont interpellées. Le secteur privé, la société civile, les syndicats, les jeunes et les femmes, l'ensemble des forces vives du continent sont interpellées. On ne peut pas, on ne doit pas rater ces départs. Après près de 60 ans d'indépendance, aujourd'hui, nous sommes 1,2 milliard d'habitants. C'est un marché énorme. Les études sont là, les stratégies sont là, les programmes sont là. Au niveau de l'Union africaine, nous avons des tonnes et des tonnes de dossiers qui sont prêts. Ce qui a fait défaut toujours, c'est la mise en application. Je crois que pour un projet aussi important dont tout le monde reconnaît, comme l'a dit le président Kagame, on n'a aucune excuse. On n'a aucune excuse et les Africains, la jeunesse africaine a le droit, au moins, qu'on lui donne cette chance. Il est bien vrai que ce n'est pas l'adoption du CFTA qui va changer du jour au lendemain leur quotidien, mais c'est la voie qui puisse permettre de briser les frontières et d'ouvrir les énergies pour que ce continent-là puisse bénéficier de ses propres ressources et compter. Et c'est ça le sens et l'essence de l'agenda 2063.
Now, Your Excellencies, I started this panel with a quote from President Kagame, and I'll end it with a quote that we heard just minutes ago at that very podium. You said, "Let's raise our ambitions higher. We can achieve great things together." Ladies and gentlemen, this is the opening panel. Please rise and acknowledge the applause. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to quickly move on once His Excellency has taken his seat. You may all take your seats. Now that was a wonderful panel. Another round of applause. Was that not amazing?
That's it.
I'm going to take a break now. My fellow moderator, one of the best in Africa, in fact, I'd say one of the best in the world. She'll take the next panel. So please welcome your moderator for the next session, Ms. Julie Gichuru.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see me? It's a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning.
Nkuko mubibona ikiganiro cyarimo kibera hano mu kanya igice cya mbere ikiganiro kikaba gisojwe ikiganiro cyari kirimo abanyacyubahiro batandukanye harimo nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika Paul Kagame wari urimo nanone na Perezida wa Komisiyo ya Afurika Yunze Ubumwe nyakubahwa Musa Mahamat Faki hakaba harimo nanone n'abandi bashoramari nka Strive Masiwa na Perezida wa Nigeria nyakubahwa Mamadou Issoufou bose bagarutse mu by'ukuri ku gaciro cyane